Hello, everyone. Welcome, viewers, to episode 71 of My First Job, the podcast. We have a young, energetic Ananya Ananth who's into SaaS sales. This is not SaaS for anybody who thinks of reading it as the Hindi version. Okay. My name is Venugopal. I head Ideascape, and I've loved doing this over the past 70 weeks. So each week I learn something new, and I'm sure Ananya has got something great for us during this episode. Welcome to the episode, Ananya.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited to do this.
Okay, Ananya, let's dive into how you started off. What was your first job like, or what was your early childhood like? And
Okay.
then how did the process of building your career or thinking about your career began? Because parents have this question starting from 12th standard,
True.
which annoys the the heck out of children.
Does.
But I'm sure at the end of the day, they're also concerned. So why don't you start from there?
Sure. I think somewhere subconsciously I've really followed my father's footsteps. I was one of his biggest fans growing up and still a very, very big fan of him. So he's been in very senior sales roles and operational roles. And if you really look at my path, I followed it. I think when I was a lot younger, it was the glamour attached to it because I had this cool father who would constantly be traveling. He would travel abroad. He would travel within India, and I found all of that very exciting because he's going on all of these flights. He's meeting these people. So I think a lot of this was very, very subconscious. However,
Right.
starting out, I was a very studious child, and I did very well in my grades. I took my studies very seriously. Why? Because I also realized that if I did this really well, I had a lot of time to play with my friends, no questions asked. So from a very young age, I did understand that. So I enjoyed studying. I my alarms used to ring at 4 a.m. and I was enjoyed that phase. So when it came to my 10th standard, and so in India, and I'm sure you relate to this and the audience as well, it's always a given that the top students go into science, and then the next goes into commerce, and then the next goes into arts, right? And
Right.
so the natural, I did great in my board exams, and then everybody. So I had applied to a lot of, we have PUC colleges in Bangalore, and you had these really
Right.
cool colleges like Mount Carmel, and people wanted to go
Yeah.
into it and stuff. But I remember at that time that I'd entered Bishop Cotton. After my 10th standard, I'd gone for admissions with my mother. And so it's so interesting. But the neighboring five Catholic schools toppers were coming into Bishop Cotton for commerce. And my natural inclination was always towards commerce. But then there was that nagging feeling, hey, but I scored all these marks. And then everybody's telling me that I should probably go into science. But I had great support from my parents on you should do what you want to do and you're carving your path out. So I did my 11th and 12th in commerce, and I really enjoyed that. It was great fun. I mean, anybody who's done high school will understand it's a great party. So
Right.
again, so you don't really, and it was a split second decision. I kid you not. I mean, I was at the school, and then I was like, hey, this is where I want to go, and I want to do commerce. And I had actually applied to a bunch of PUC schools, PUC colleges for science. Then cut across to once I finished my 12th, naturally going into a BCom or a BBA or a BBM was very cool and popular back then. So then
Right.
I went to Christ to do an interesting program that they had and was very unique to them at that time. It was doing a BCom honors in finance and investment.
Okay.
And so I had this idea of working in an investment bank and being this cool person and burning the midnight oil but loving it. So in fact, that was my first job. It was at a KPO of an investment bank in Hyderabad. I think about 8 months of it, and I knew this is not my cup of green tea, coffee, anything. It's just, and so then that's actually when
What
I decided.
happened? I'd just like to understand what is it that you didn't like, or you thought, why? What is the shift in your mind about?
So I think so when you start out, right, you don't really. I've done significant number of internships by then, but
Hmm.
even then, it's only when you start out your job you realize what are some things that come naturally to you, and what
Hmm.
are weaknesses that if you concentrate too much on, it is only going to bring you down. And I realized the things that I really liked doing was talking to people. That was at an almost zero at the investment bank firm because It's just lots of number crunching and seeing, so in fact, I worked in the mergers and acquisitions team for healthcare. So you're going through large amounts of data. You're taking phenomenal, strategic decisions, and you're definitely, what you do has a direct impact on a decision maker of leadership. But I feel like somewhere it just didn't, it didn't work for me. Another thing is I hold like work culture above everything else, and I think that job really taught me that come what may, I need to have a great work culture. I need to really like my colleagues, and I should be able to show up to work. And that really reprioritized for me, because every job that I've had before, after that, I have always asked the HR, can you candidly tell me what's your work culture like? I've taken that extra effort to call up people who's worked there. I'm like, tell me, how is it really? Because I realized early on that this is your 80%.
Right, absolutely. That's a very smart thing to do because uh, rather than check out as to whether do you enjoy the job, a large part of it will be that you need to work with your other colleagues
Absolutely.
as well. So that's a
Yeah.
significant part of how teams work. Great. So then what happened? How did you move out of?
So then now I couldn't go into a sales job immediately because I needed to study, and my mother at that point also wanted me to do my masters. So I did my MBA in Christ University in sales and marketing. And the funny
Okay,
thing is, within the first week, I did have somebody tell me that, hey, but you come across so smart. Why aren't you doing this in finance? And I think this is where I want to take a pause. Is that at the impressionable age at 18, 19, 20, 21, there's going to be a lot of people telling you a lot. But even at that age, you just have to find that time to center yourself and see what's something that's going to work for you in a long term. And see, we're all making mistakes. We're all going to be, and it's not impossible to shift course. And that's something else that I, want to emphasize on. You don't have to feel at 21, 22 that you're stuck in a job. You can change lines. And, today, in fact, it's a lot easier than it was, say, 10 years back when I was trying these things. So that's actually when I did my master's in sales and marketing, and then Salesforce was the campus placement and one of the finest jobs that I've been at.
okay, okay. So uh, when you got into Salesforce, what were the initial days on the job like?
So that was straight up, being thrown in like a bat cave filled with sales personnel. And so, in fact, even the understanding of it, right? At an interview, you don't really grasp the depth of what your role is going to be like. And in fact, like 10 years back, if somebody asked me what is SaaS sales, I would have had no clue. And I was like, what is that? I have no idea. But just to give your viewers also a little bit, so in the last 7 years, I worked in SaaS companies, which are primarily companies that sell software as a service. And so you're basically selling software to other organizations, and these could be, you could be selling CRMs, or like today, what I do is I sell customer support management portals to other organizations. And in fact, in the last 10 years, there have been tons of SaaS companies that have cropped up, and there's a
Right.
certain way they sort of operate, even regards to their org structure and their teams. So that was very confusing for me the first 2 months. There was a lot of words thrown in at me, like sales development and sales and territory, and it's very, very new, and that's okay. It's okay to step in and not know everything, but just having that attitude of like showing up every day. And sometimes it's all you need to do is just show up at your job, and you will learn 4 5 new things, and then you'll continuously keep moving. So that
Okay.
was my first job.
So the interview you got in at campus, do you remember any part of the interview and what are the questions they asked, or you just breezed through?
I think so this is another very interesting story, and this is where I always leave my life to the universe. I actually applied to ITC. I was very, very excited. This is ITC Hotels, and I was
Right.
looking forward, to joining them. But they had that. So Christ University has a rule, like a lot of universities, that you can only take one job, and you can only
Okay.
accept one offer letter. So ITC Hotels had come in. I'd done all the interviews, but for my final interview, I had to go to Delhi, and the three or four of us who were finalists had to do this on an exam date. And we had permission from the college did not give us permission to miss the exam and go, so that was slated for another
Okay.
date. In the meanwhile, I just sat for Salesforce. So in fact, that's again what I want to talk about, is that I just sat because a bunch of my friends were sitting for placement, and I was like, okay, this sounds cool. And then it was very interesting when they spoke about the company. I literally just went from one, progressed from one round to another with a very stress-free mind, because I was just having fun. because I hadn't got my offer letter from ITC, and I was like, okay, I'm just having fun, and I think that's what helped me was having that ease of mind and being my true self, and that being something that perhaps the person on the other side liked, and then getting recruited.
Okay.
Yeah, so there was no
So
stress. I mean, I honestly,
absolutely
like you said,
no
I think I just breezed through it. I was having fun. I was just going from room to room with a bunch of people I'd studied with. So yeah, that's how it was.
okay. No, which is a wonderful way to begin your job because
Yeah,
it means that you're not starting from a position of fear or saying, hey, is this the company that I want to join and I really want to figure out? But you were lucky that, in terms of at that particular point, you got exactly what was best for you. For some
absolutely.
people, they have to find their best as they go along and
True.
course correct.
Yes.
Okay. So, uh, Salesforce, what is it like actually talking to clients? When was it that you started making presentations to clients or fixing up meetings? What
Oh,
is
yeah.
that whole process like?
So that's actually so I actually entered the sales development role. So you have you have the SDR or the BDR teams as we call them, who basically book meetings for an account executive, and these are qualified meetings. So I kid you not, it really took a lot to muster up courage. I still remember the initial days when I would dial a number, and this was those telephonic. It wasn't the mobiles,
Right.
and I would actually pray, please don't pick up, please don't pick up. I don't know. I would have a whole script in front of me, and like, hi, I'm Ananya Ananth from Salesforce. Is this a good time? I remember having the scripts, in front of me. I was
Script.
always very prepared.
Yeah.
I before I made a call, I would do like a 20-minute research on the person on LinkedIn and the internet, but I would still feel so nervous. And if they ever picked up and said that, oh, hey, I'm in a meeting, in my head, I'm like, yes, I don't need to talk now. But you go through that journey, right? And but I
Yeah.
think it's great advice that I got from someone at Salesforce itself, who in the future are also important mentors for me. Is that they were like, so they said, what is your biggest fear? And I said that I don't know, if I call somebody, I don't know if they shout at me or something, and I am very scared of that. And I had someone say that, hey, in the role that you are in a day, if you don't get shouted by two people, that means you're not doing your job well. And that was such a mind shift, right? The narrative really shifted for me. And now I'm like, hey, 1 second, that's not a bad thing. Here's someone actually encouraging me to reach that point where somebody's, I'm not
Right.
encouraging you to frustrate a prospect, but it's just
Yeah.
that shift in mindset really helped me. But there are a lot of
Okay.
nervous moments, and you really learn that and in fact, when I joined, we were about 12 of us from college. So in our head, we were still a little la-di-da about it. Oh, we're just like a bunch of friends doing some things together. We have these shiny new Mac laptops, and here they've given us an iPhone, and oh wow, they pay us to come here and have a great time. So there's a lot of that as well, and you really
Yeah.
learn, and by sheer observation, right? And again, I'm lucky to have worked in spaces where I've had phenomenally inspiring people, from the industry who worked alongside, and you sort of take nitpicks from everybody, and how do they conduct themselves, how does somebody groom themselves, how do they take a pause and speak. There's so much that you learn in that first 2 years, right? This is actually the
Right.
real MBA.
Yeah. No, and that is really a process of learning which can't be, you have to go through it. There is no way that you can pick it up from a book. So what is
Absolutely.
the first time you got shouted at,
I
like?
did, I did. I got shouted plenty of times that first 1 year. The first time, I think I was a bit teary eyed about it, but I think by the second, third time, I was like, yeah, whatever, I'm going to call him in 3, 4 hours again. And that attitude builds. And this is actually why I really encourage people that whatever it is, the first decade of your life, spend it in sales. It makes you thick skinned, because you have to be very persistent and optimistic and positive as a person to really last in this career as well, right? I
Yeah.
really feel like a decade in sales does you good. It does you really good.
And more than everything else, like you said, it's not, sales is not, a lot of people think that it's just reciting features or putting out the benefits and people are just going to buy to a large extent. And especially you're in B2B kind of sales, which is
Right.
business to business, and that there's a whole group of people taking a decision. I mean, we're
True.
going a little deeper into what really happens, but you also realize that in a room you could have three people on your side and two people against you. It's
Absolutely.
not
It's
so
not
it's
easy.
not something where it's a common thing where people say, oh, the force of your personality and all of these things, which is important up to a point where people think they can talk to you and actually get answers out of you. The
In
other
fact,
thing which I want to emphasize was uh, how important was it to show commitment and build trust with your customers.
oh, huge.
So,
In
what
fact,
did you do? What did you learn to do? And what are the little things that you did in order to
absolutely.
ensure that that happened?
So I'm going to take it in two parts. In fact, I want to address the first thing you said. I had a lot of people who, when I started out my career in sales, say that, oh, you're going to be brilliant at this. I mean, you're quite chatty and you can talk easily, and this is going to be easy. In fact, that's one of my biggest challenges is the fact that the number one thing in sales is that you need to listen. I still remember an incident. So we had a lot of mock calls that we did, in my early days, and we had sales enablement people who would sit with us for these mock calls. He would actually put my call on mute and say that you're talking too much, you're not letting them talk, and you're not a good enough listener. And that's something I've learned over the time. So even today, even when I call on the mobile, my initial this thing is when you say something is to talk to you back. So I put myself on mute so that even if I'm talking, I'm still the person's not hearing me and they're listening. And it is only when you have some level of awkwardness in a call does the person on the other side open up. You don't need to fill the gaps.
Right.
Some stunning insights like that I
Oh,
did.
that's absolutely stunning. And this is a great technique, Ananya.
It is a
I mean,
great
if
thing.
you are a natural talker, press
Yeah.
mute.
Yeah. And I forced myself. I was like, okay, I'm just going, even on a Zoom, with prospects, I forced myself after doing my initial introduction that I need to hear them. This can't be about me reacting to them. So I immediately go on mute, and then there's like that awkwardness for 30, 40 seconds, and then they open up. And it's
Right.
beautiful, the amount you will really learn on how do you get more out of a call. And to your
Right.
question on trust, so following Salesforce, I moved to Chennai, and I actually had the opportunity to work at Freshworks. In that role, I was actually taking care of the Southeast Asia market, new market for me, and all of that. And this is also me in my first account executive or salesperson role. And man, I went the first day. I'm like, okay, this is my target. I'm gonna be aggressive. Every call, I'm gonna make some money out of it. And that was my attitude. It was not the attitude of helping somebody out. It was not the attitude of trust, building trust. I was not trying to build a relationship. And I think I went through my first year losing deals because of that. And again, I had somebody great, and I've always lucked out in having brilliant managers. And I had, Vinod Chandramali was my manager at the time, and he said that, hey, take a pause. Just remember that the person on the other side is as human as you. All they want out of this call is a great story from you and a story that makes sense for them. and
Yeah.
and I think every point of time in my career when I have failed, I've had a messiah come and say something really insightful, that has really changed my narrative and the way I approach things. And then I
Right.
think he said that I'm going to give you, while it's, sales is meeting your numbers every month. But I did go through a period that this 3 months, I'm not going to look at my numbers. I'm only going to build relationship. And in 6 to 1 year, I saw a really big change in the sort of conversations I was having, in the results that I was starting to get. And I hold these values very, very high to this date.
And the other part about this is that when you listen, you understand what the other person is looking for. Most of the time, like you said, it's listening to figure out what is it that the customer really wants rather than say, what is it that I have?
So
And
true.
if you don't spend that time, then you're never going to learn. But that is the other part, Ananya, which is that you learned. I
Yeah.
think your bosses would have spoken to every single salesperson telling them the same thing. Some people learn, others don't.
True.
Because for some people, that's a mind shift. That I should convince, they think that when they speak, they convince people.
True.
But to understand that the best way to convince someone is to listen is
Yeah.
very hard to understand.
Very
It's
true.
not because you're not doing anything. You're
Correct.
saying you're just listening to a person talk. And somehow, but I think what happens there is that the other person then gets the feeling that you are really interested in solving a problem.
Absolutely.
How do you communicate that? You can't keep saying, I want to solve your problem, I want to do this,
True.
and sometimes just on service calls, which I have to do based on some, the TV has gone down or the OTT network has gone down, and you're talking to people, and you
Mm.
realize that some of them just don't get it, others do. Because
Yes.
there are some people who just shepherd you through the entire call and you emerge looking, feeling, this is okay.
True.
There are others who make it very hard for you to be sympathetic. So
True.
I think each one of these, that's a very important lesson in sales. Now,
That's
was most of your sales happening on calls, or did you have presentations to make, and what
yeah.
was that like?
So actually, the sales method of selling, it's also depending on the audience. Say, in the beginning of my career, it was largely small and medium business, and then in Freshworks, it was mid market, sometimes a large enterprise, and today in the space that I am and working at ServiceNow, it's all large enterprises that I speak to, and the stage is going to be different. The way you approach is also going to be different. So early days was a lot easier in terms of sometimes on a call you qualify, I have a product, you need very few number of licenses, here's me connecting you to an AE, and it's a lot simpler. That way, actually, when you start selling to mid market and higher, you learn the art of selling. It is not transactional anymore. It's very long term, it's very strategic, and you have to give every stage, time and patience and the effort that's required. When you start out, it's very simple to say that, hey, I have a great product, you seem to have these problems, let's match it. But then you have to understand, okay, what does your procurement process look like? Who are the other decision makers at your end? In fact, you'll have a lot of prospects who are very interested in you, but sometimes they're also evaluating other vendors, and it's a lot about how am I emerging, higher as compared to the other vendors, and what am I doing differently. And that's actually when you go deeper into it, right? So now I really spend a good amount of time, we call it qualifying, our pipeline, our qualifying our deal, and that's one of the
Yeah.
most important. um,
Right.
and in my initial days, every deal was a deal, a qualified deal. But I think today it's a lot of so you also have to have, yeah, conversations with your prospect. They said, hey, I'm giving you all of this information, these presentations and these demos that you want, but can I have something from your side? And that is that I want to meet your management, I want to meet the decision maker, I want to know what is your current environment and how can I really add value. And I think you have to really communicate that. The earlier you communicate that, the better, because even the prospect company understands that this is going to be a relationship that's a very give and take sort of a methodology. Another very important thing is to really, and this is something I still take some time, is that how serious is the person on the other side. Really, if I had a penny for every time I asked for timeline and they said that, oh, I should have had this yesterday, I would have retired by now. I'm really, but really, is that urgency? How compelling is your urgency, and what is your urgency? So, it's something again I learned early on was that, qualify the budget. Where's that money coming from? Authority. Are you talking to a decision maker? Needs. Do they really need this product, or can they still run their world without it? And find out
Yeah.
your timelines. So these are like I mean, again, like this is super important even today in every conversation, and every conversation you're sort of qualifying in and qualifying out, and and that sense comes with some time.
Yeah. So compared to the person who entered the job 7 years ago to where
Yeah.
you are today, what do you think has been the arc of your career? In the sense of, how do you see the change that, like you said, one of the insightful things is put yourself on mute, the other is qualifying a particular prospect. So,
Yeah.
what gives you a sense of, yes, this particular company or this particular person I should be spending a lot more time with him or her?
Actually, I've had a lot of people like that who've been very, very impactful. In fact, when
Okay.
I was at Freshworks, this was in the pre-IPO era.
Right.
That's going to be always a stallmark in my career, in the sense that you could really wake up and be the decision maker of your territory, right? And I also had
Mhm.
a very, very secure, a very wise person who was my manager at that point in time, who gave you that space. But if you ask me what are my arcs, so here's actually, what I've realized is that your milestones in your career are so few and far. And then I started realizing that, I can't work only for, winning my quarterly numbers. That's going to happen only 4 times in a year. And you can't be
Correct.
happy only 4 times a year or sad only 4 times a year, right? That's just not sustainable. And
Right.
that's actually when I realized that I need to have a more sustainable daily, I need to find a milestone every day, in the sense that,
Okay.
did I make the 20 calls that I committed to myself that I will make? Did I have 4 good conversations? Did I finish everything that's on my book, as a checklist, right? So when you say, has there been resounding arcs? Been many, but I think we spend too much time trying to find these milestones and arcs, when it's actually the everyday that matters a lot more. And again, that took me a while to understand, because, and I realized, hey, 1 second, this is just 4 times a year, and what are we talking about? And this is not great for me or my head, or any of that, right? Like, how am I winning every day, and how do I count those wins every day? That's actually something that I've really tuned outwards to.
Yeah. So the daily milestone, I think, is a wonderful way
Yeah.
of looking at things because, for one thing, you can do it every day.
Yes.
But then let me give you a counter to that because I've had people tell me that doesn't a job is interesting when you're learning, but
Yeah.
once you learn the basics, it settles down to a kind of routine. So is a routine bad or good?
So definitely there's a routine. Like, that
Yeah.
you need to wake up and do these 8 activities to,
Yeah.
sustain yourself in this career, and those will give you results. But the beauty of working in sales in India is that your prospects and customers are so creative that every single day is a different day. I have never had the same challenge or problem coming from, a customer. They really keep you on your toes, and how, and that's what I like about it. And that's where the learning comes from. So because you have a problem, and even today, I immediately call my managers that I'm stuck. What would you do over here? And again, I don't take this lightly, but I've worked with phenomenal people, and especially the people I directly report to have been very, very great personalities and great leaders themselves. In fact, this teachers day, I wished my manager, saying that you're actually my first teacher. He said, hey, but I want to be a manager. I said, listen, for me, managers here and teachers here, and you're already here.
So
So
give me a few of those instances, Ananya, when you
ish.
think a customer's been, tell me a few things that, let's say in Salesforce, some of the things that happened, then
So
in Freshworks. Yeah.
sure, sure. So again, because I'm not remembering so well which company what happened is, but I've had customers come back and, have said that, hey, can you? So you have a typical trial period of 21 days in some softwares that you purchase, right? And they've said that, hey, can you extend this 21-day period by another 21-day period? And I'm like, yeah, I can do this. This sounds decently reasonable hours. You're communicating with me. And then it's like, hey, can you do this for me for another 3 months? And then you're like, 1 second, are you trying to just quietly use this software for free? I mean, that's not something that happens. You meet a lot of prospects who would, just use you as another code. And when they use you as another code, here's them not communicating greatly with you. Them just saying that, hey, I just want to buy 100 licenses, and I just want to, all I want to do is for you to give me the price of that 100 license. Now, the way which we work is we also have different versions of the product. And for that, you need to
Right.
understand what the requirement looks like. So you're going to have that. I've had, and I used to take care of Southeast Asia and Freshworks. So I've gone to Indonesia, reached the customer's place, and then they said, oh wait, that meeting was today. Oh, I really forgot. And here's them constantly hearing from my sales development and fixing it. And I'm just like, hey, I came from India for this, and yes, this is a fixed meeting. And then coming back, I've also had customers and partners who would only meet you for a meal, and then you're like, hey, 1 second, do they want this meal? Do they want this product? What is more attractive to them? At this point, I mean, there've been great roaring stories through the last 7 8 years for sure. But yeah,
Okay.
but you enjoy it. That's the only reason that keeps you sane. I've had
Right.
friends who've gone, taking their prospects drinking and then getting caught with cops, and then
Right.
because of that, forming such a great brand and then selling. So it really depends on where you are in your journey.
So you think that you're now able to figure out those who are genuinely serious versus those who simply are looking for options in the market right now? Or is it something that evolves over time? Because,
It
like you
really
said, customers are also very smart about how they get the maximum out of any particular thing. And one favorite strategy, like you said, is playing one against the other. Like,
Yes,
I got this. It's a negotiating tactic you use in real life as well. So,
correct.
if you want to get a good deal. So, what has been your way of ensuring that uh, you keep the client's needs in mind, but you also keep your company's needs in mind?
Absolutely. And that's something that's very important, is that understanding that whenever you are investing time and energy in this, you're actually spending company resource on this, right? And
Right,
that's very important to be cognizant of that. I'm still learning in that journey, right? Because Indian prospects and customers we are very different. We are a very, very different market. We're incomparable. In fact, I today manage a territory that is, there's North India, there's South India, there's public sector. Every territory of mine works in a very, very different way. So how I've understood is that you really need to understand how serious are they is by their involvement. And by involvement, are they spending considerable time with you? Are they turning up for your workshops? When you give demos, are they looking at their phones, or are they focused on seeing your demo? When you perform, a demo, is somebody asking, hey, but then I have it a little differently? In fact, something that I've learned is that when somebody has strong sales objections, those are far better prospects for you to have than somebody who's saying, yeah, this is great, yeah, this is great. And then you realize that only the ones with an objection are the ones who are taking this seriously.
genuinely considering you.
and
Exactly.
and initially you would get very irritated with the ones who have sales objections, right? You'd be like, listen, really, I mean, why is this person asking me so many questions, and this is additional work for me? But then you realize those are the deals that you actually close. Those are the companies that you make a very good impact with, and later on become great references for you to provide to your other prospects and customers. So it's
Right.
always understanding that give and take, and where are you on that journey.
Okay. So since you're not talking at the base level, you're somebody who's already in 7 years, you've mastered a
Yeah.
lot of things. So let me throw you a tough one. You
Okay.
meet a client where the problem is not you or your product. The problem is an ego hassle
Hmm.
between two of the people who have to decide. What is your course of action?
So in early days, I would have said that sounds like their problem, not my problem, and I walked out. But I think today and the question that you asked is very relevant to a lot of the organizations that we work with, where somebody says that I'm only going to look at this software because that's what I used in my previous company, and then you have somebody who's saying that no, I want something different for us today, and then you're going to have somebody saying that I don't want this on my head. Taking them individually and understanding at the core what are their problems individually and addressing them, and honestly taking that time and effort to do it, will bring you results. I'm not saying you will be a 100% successful, but this
Yeah,
is the best way you take it. I always believe that take it separately. You cannot bring two people with different goals and ideas on one call, and have that journey. So in fact, and that's actually why we have in SaaS companies, we have a really large team that supports you. For some people, it's a lot about what is the ROI I'm getting, and go into that. And this is probably because a project has failed for them in the past, and this particular person was questioned. And it's important to give them a space to open up about that, and then
yeah,
you make that commitment, right? We have very, very strong business value teams, and what they can come into those conversations and tell you, hey, you put this X number of dollars, this is what you get in 18 months, and these are your ROI calculators. So understand what really bothers them. For a lot of people, it is that I need to look great, my decision can't go wrong, I am so and so. And that's
yeah,
absolutely fine as well, because sometimes when you are at such a high role, it comes with its own repercussions as well,
definitely.
right?
Yeah,
So at this point, it is all about communicating that I do have your back. I'm not disappearing in 6 months, I'm not disappearing in 1 month. A lot of times, they feel that we're going to give it to a partner to implement and then not be in the scene, and really show up for those clients, right? Because it matters to them, and this is them also giving you a lot in return. And these have to be pure relationships that you build. And that's one thing, again, I've always learned, is that just don't constantly be a taker, and you have to be a giver. And that's, and I've constantly seen this in my career as well, that
Yeah.
the sales personnel who really win are those who are absolute givers. They
Absolutely.
have an effort and they go that extra mile.
Yeah. In fact, if you've read Shoe Dog, there is Johnson, yeah, who sets up the first thing for Nike, and he literally built a CRM system before anything like this existed,
Yeah,
because he was really worried about what his customers were getting from him and
correct.
how he built that entire thing. So, I mean, you have these stories where people have gone not just the extra mile, they've gone the extra
And those
destiny.
are the ones who really, people remember.
Yes,
And even within your organization, it's the colleagues who have your back, it's the manager who will stand up for you no matter what. And these
right,
personalities are, these are relationships, and then you will blindly follow them to the next job, and it's a lot more than that.
right. No,
So
and it's strange that you can see it happening. The
yeah,
same incident, you can have five people and get five interpretations of the same thing,
absolutely.
because to a large extent it depends on how they view it, and from their corner of what happened in that particular meeting, they see it that way.
Yeah,
But I think what you've shown is an amazing ability to shift gears and shift perspectives as well, which
yeah,
is one of the hardest things to learn. It's one thing to say that, okay, I'll do this, I'll follow a script, and then I'll
yeah.
didn't happen, sorry, versus saying, okay, there's a customer who wants you to cut through the entire thing and come through the benefit right at the end, and you ignore the script and come only to that. Knowing that at that particular point is really important.
True.
But I think that's a question of, so in your experience now, 7 years, okay,
Yeah.
what do you think are your immediate kind of goals? What is it that you think you'd like to spend a little more time on?
So I think one of the things I definitely want to spend more time is that, and it's also because I've spent 7 years in this, is that definitely going deeper in the product. So the great thing about working in sales is typically you will have an account executive, and then you're supported by somebody who's technically very strong as well, right? I think my aim now is that I want to get to a point where I'm able to have some of those very, very deep technical conversations. And for that, you have to have great product knowledge. It's everybody knows the product to a large extent. You definitely know it a lot deeper than your client, and so you can go for those one or two calls and come out as quite a hero. But I think the true way to have an edge is to go a lot deeper into what the product can really give. And this is a near impossible task from an area of, as a salesperson, you already have a set number of activities to do routinely. You've got your numbers, you've got to forecast it, you have to constantly follow up with your customers. But then I do see this as a point that's can be a really great differentiating factor. And the second thing is that I do want to, sort of build a brand for myself, in the sense that the ability to move from one company to another and have a set of contacts already who are willing to purchase a solution based on trust. And I
Right,
think that's something that's my focal point today, is that building a great network,
right,
of people. That's a
right.
big important for me today.
Extremely wise words, Ananya, because these are things that people sometimes take decades to understand. I mean,
True.
it's not because they're not aware of it, it's just that this is much tougher and it's much slower.
True.
It's not easy to build a community, it's not easy to build a following, because it means that when a person looks at you in a certain way, the trust comes from saying, if I speak to Ananya, this will happen. To a large extent, that is the focal point of whatever you do. And people think that, I've had people stand me up at certain, after meetings being fixed, uh,
Mm,
not deliver what has been given, what they were expected to deliver, and being quite casual about it. In which case, that 5 years down the line, this person will still be struggling,
yeah.
because they've not understood the fundamental aspect of building this foundation and then taking it forward from there. I tell people that very often, trust starts with Such small things like, I'll tell you, I'm sending you an email tomorrow, and that email has to go tomorrow,
Absolutely.
not
Absolutely.
5 days later with an apology. It has to go the next day. And these are such small things to do. But people
Correct.
seem to think that trust is one major kind of achievement. It's a series, like you said beautifully, it's a daily milestone.
It
And if
is.
those milestones are big enough, then people won't forget you. They will not, they will ensure that they continue to interact with you because you deliver on what is expected. Now, let's move to the next thing, which is
Yeah.
you're good as a person, and then you're entrusted with a team. What is the difference in operations that happens?
Absolutely. This is actually very, very important because you really learn to respect somebody else's time, space, working style. Today, in the role that I am in, I collaborate with various teams. And so this also means that I'm never going to be doing this alone, right? And I'm going to need an army of people. So, really bringing that army together sometimes is a task in itself. But I think it's very, very important to be easy enough to work with and adapt some things out of everybody's style and give that space of comfort. Because why
Right.
not? Right? It's again something that I've seen is that again, these are some stories that do happen earlier. Is that somebody realized that I'm actually great at at chat because I'm constantly multitasking. So I'd be on a call, but if something urgent comes up on a chat, I quickly respond. And I had somebody say that, hey, is can I only WhatsApp you? Is that easier for you? Because I can change our channel of communicating. And this is
Okay.
somebody who's very, very senior. And that's actually when I realized that, hey, if somebody like her could do it, why
Right.
not me? And I've always taken that. So when I work with someone, I always ask, hey, what's your comfortable time slot to spend at? And however junior somebody is, however senior somebody is, small things like ask them, is this a good time for you? Sometimes we're all working remotely, sometimes we're at office, sometimes we're in a client meeting, and it's always nice to give a space. In fact, even to this date, I do have a manager who could actually just give me a call straight away, but there's always a note on on chat saying that, hey, is this a good time to call you? Right, and these are these small things that you really pick up. The
Yeah.
second thing is that sometimes when we work together, it always happens that one or two of them are carrying more weight, and that is
Hmm.
largely okay in most settings because you understand the others are preoccupied or what. But achieving a sense of balance, in the people who are working together, and this is nothing to do with hierarchy, is something I've realized. Everybody is pulling their weight, but achieving that balance, that everybody is equal representation, a feeling of inclusiveness, and that's something that I hold very, very high. Is a feeling of inclusiveness, whether you're working in a deal together or in a meeting room or working as a team, is the feeling of inclusiveness. And I put that above all because I've been included in great settings in the past, which has helped me accelerate largely. So these are the three things that I keep in mind. And especially when you work with other people, you have to really understand that there is no blame game. In fact, a lot of times you do meet people who constantly come out of meetings saying, "Oh, he knows nothing, she knows nothing," and these are the people, Venu, who never grow in their careers. You do see them stagnant, you see them frustrated, and you see them constantly criticize.
Right.
Entering a meeting or a setup and being okay with the fact that everybody is not at the same pace, right, is what is very important. And never make somebody feel awful for not knowing something. That's
Right.
again something that you have to hold very high because you have to create that safe ecosystem that people can be like, okay, I know this, but I feel like I forgot. Do you think you can just do a rejig or a recap for me? And
Right.
giving that respect and space is very important. And I definitely don't want to ever be known as somebody who comes out of a meeting and says that, oh God, that guy knew nothing and that girl knew nothing. Yeah, these are things again I take very seriously.
True. How do you handle people with attitude, in the sense that they simply have a persona which is meant to
Irritate.
aggravate?
Absolutely. And you have a lot. And again, this goes back to in college. There was a program we actually did. This was in my BCom on counseling. It actually started out as student counseling and peer counseling, but then these were workshops which went a lot deeper. And there's a sentence that they did say in that is that you are never against a person, you are only against an action of theirs, and learn to keep that separate. Again, that was again a game changer for me in terms of relationships. And this could be anybody, this could be with your mother, your partner, your colleague, or a teammate, your manager, right? Is that separate the act from the person. And that's helped, because you really, and I don't want to always give people who are difficult to work with an excuse that okay, they're like this because of that. But it largely comes because they're not comfortable in an environment, they are feeling insecure, they are feeling, jealous, they are feeling that I don't know enough, they are comparing themselves with somebody else. And the only way to see, one part of it is that you could be equally show attitude, but that's not great for you in the long term, right? Is that give them that comfort, and take that little extra effort that hey, why is this person like this? It could be these two three elements. What saying people please and go out of your way every single time for every single person, but you will also have a sense of okay, why somebody not is feeling this way. There will be people where it's no use for you to invest your time, and you are thank you but this is not for me, and maintain your dignity and elegance when you move out. That's again something that's very important. It is these scenarios that really show us what are we made of, and how do we sort of react in certain situations. And you meet a ton of these people, whether it's prospects, a lot of it internally as well, somebody not prioritizing your work before somebody others. But you just it's that's again where relationship comes in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the next thing that I want to talk about is that software used to be, let's say, about 20 years ago, it was operating systems, and
Mm.
you installed software on your PC, versus now having to play with several aspects. So it's never as if one company will have just what is called the tech stack, or whatever it is that, I have this for this, I have this for some other function. So do you think that things are going to get more complex in the long run? Or do you see this getting simpler because there are some large companies who are dominating certain areas, but you will still, it's it's almost as if the whole environment now is like a soup of technologies floating together, and at some point it seems to be bewildering to customers to make a call.
Absolutely. Yeah, actually, that's a great question, Venu. In fact, day in and day out, this is one of the things that I do speak to prospects is that they have and they spend a ton of money on having like say 10, 15 vendors that they speak to and 10, 15 software. I think where we've reached today as a point is that how do you consolidate this tech stack, so to say? And
Yeah.
one of the top things that comes out of this is that how well are your products integrating with one another? Do they speak to one another, or do they operate in silos? It's always good to have one platform, and a platform model of looking at things is very important. And having a powerful platform that integrates with your ERPs and your invoice system and your HR system is really important. Add to that, today we are in the whole cusp of AI and Gen AI, and you hear this all the time. Right? So
Yeah.
here's people, having a tech software and having like disparate systems, and then they want an element of AI and Gen AI, and then suddenly they're like, oh my god, we've really goofed up. But wait, the people who put this 15 years back are not even in our company anymore, and what do we do? That's today's enterprises problems. This is, if I really
Yeah.
had to put it in a nutshell, right? We
Right.
have to do the hard work of relooking at your tech stack. Don't rip and replace everything, but and that's the software that I sell today is the ServiceNow Now platform. And what it's built on, right, is that it is one huge tech stack that helps you do a whole lot of things, at the same time integrates with your current environment. And you have to really have that insight as a prospect. I mean, as a CIO of a company, that can this sustain me for another 10 years, right, while I constantly am able to add more solution. But again, it's not the companies that have 100 solutions in place that are using it at all. It's about having the few solutions in place but using it very very effectively. And these are
Right.
not easy. Whenever you change the software that you use, there is a great problem in adoption, there is problem in change management, release management, all of these
Right.
issues you all have. But it is those CIOs who boldly take those decisions and make that change in their organizations that really, set apart as compared to the others.
Absolutely. So let's go to something that most people look at when they get into a job. The thing
Yeah.
that most people first focus on, salary. What
Yeah.
is it that I'm going to get? So, where would you place this? And in SaaS sales, give me a band between which, from starting off to what happens when you reach the very top. What is it that people can aspire to?
So, especially in the spaces that I've worked in, definitely SaaS sales definitely can pay you very well. And it's also in your hand, right? Because a large part of it is commissions. You overachieve, you're going to bank a lot more money. And and what it does to you is that it definitely helps you attain financial freedom a lot earlier. It helps you to invest larger chunks of money. You are going to be in spaces where as your salary increases, so do your expenses. But again, these are choices that we make, right?
Yeah,
But
right.
I would, especially when you start out, do not look at salary. I mean, if you've say taken a lot of loans and you have a lot of responsibility, I understand that if you do come from that, salary is very important. But if you have a choice, say for the first 2 years, to not prioritize salary, please prioritize great companies to work with, great cultures to work with, and your first 2 3 years in an organization and in your career, just make a ton of people, and make a great network and learn a lot from a ton of people. Don't make it about your salary at all. Salary is very important. You are not here to do charity. It's very important for you to be paid your due. But in your initial years, don't look at it as the number one factor in choosing a company. Even today, I do know people who are making great money and not having the time or the energy, being in very very toxic environments, having a very stressful life, starting to have health problems. So, and those are things you don't really realize when you start out, is
Right.
that this is not a sprint. This is a very long marathon that you have to play for 25 30 years, right? And you're going to
Yeah.
constantly, probably every decade, be doing something different. But above all, and I've actually done this math, because when I wanted to move companies, is that the number one is, it has to be a great learning environment. Is
Yeah.
this a company that fosters that? That's number one. Second, a great culture. And by culture, I don't mean a place which says that, oh, you missed your number, oh, no problem, come give me a hug and let me clap for you. That's not great culture. Great culture is winning and losing, but still having a great psychological safety, that you do have.
Yeah.
Going up to office and having great people to, speak to and work to, and not feeling, fear, not feeling like somebody's attacking you. And that is great culture. Is And you have some phenomenal companies today, globally and in India, who put culture above all. The third is, who do you report to? And this really makes a lot of difference. When you are looking for jobs, take that extra trouble to find out people who work in that company. Find out how is this person, what do their direct reportees have to say about them, because this changes your block. It can really change the way your career meanders. So definitely try and understand how your managers. And then fourth place, I would put salary. That's where I would, because if you do have these three boxes checked, 100% you're going to be able to feel very very secure financially.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fabulous, Ananya. Let
Yeah.
me end with another question which most people would ask themselves.
Yeah.
When do you think it's time to change and move on from a company?
Right. So every time I've moved on, right? So let's start with the very first KPO. I moved because I realized this is not, I want to change course basically. I want to move to sales. When I moved out from Salesforce, it was because I got married and I moved from Bangalore to Chennai. I needed a role in Chennai and I moved to Freshworks. So it was never any other compelling event. When I moved to ServiceNow, but it's as simple as this, but I actually changed homes and I now live in the exterior parts of Chennai. I needed something that's remote because I cannot go to the city every day. And
Mhm.
this came chanced at the very same time. And this is again where sometimes when you work with great companies, they recognize talent and they make your life a little comfortable. Where today I am able to work in a space where I'm doing a few days from Chennai, but I largely spend a lot of time in Bangalore, which is where the office is. And that's also works out very well for you, because when they this is what it has to again be a give and take. When the company gives
Right.
you some flexibility, take that
Then
flexibility.
this is what you offer. Yeah.
So I have never left, because of anything else, but something in my personal life changed quite a bit, and I've left. But it can be because of very different reasons for everybody. And it's okay to wake up and say that, hey, this manager is never going to be great for me to report to. And instead of bickering about this job, can I look for something else? And sometimes you will be in a spot where you start hearing that people around you are making a lot more money, and then you jump to it. Sometimes you jump because you want to work in a startup and just feel that energy of what that's like, right? But you have to have a definitely having a career where every 1 or 2 years you're moving is not great. It's not sustainable. I see a lot of people do that nowadays, but it's also about, what are you really learning? You can't do much within 1 year in a company and make impact. Right? So take that time. In fact, my next aim is to, I've never done 5 years in a company because of, the moves that I've made. And now my first aim is that I want to hit 5 years, and then I want to build it up to 10, because I want to, work long term with these phenomenal companies that I'm getting to be a part of.
Yeah. Fabulous, Ananya. It's been a learning experience for me because
Thank
for
you.
someone so young, you have an extremely balanced head on your shoulders. You speak with the wisdom of somebody who spent decades in the business and not someone who spent less than a decade. I know this will serve you in very good stead as you move ahead. So, whatever your ambitions are, whatever your hopes are, whatever your desires are, I hope they come true. And I
Thank
hope you have a wonderful stint ahead.
Absolutely.
Anything that you would like to close with to people who are watching this?
I don't know. I mean, I think take it light. I think suddenly we're all a lot more serious. We take ourselves and situations very seriously. And I don't know if this started post pandemic or what really happened to us, and we're all still there, right?
Yeah.
But I think just sort of lightening, moments, because those are the moments that you really remember. And
Yeah.
we have all reached a spot where we considerably spend more time with our colleagues than with our family, and that's the reality of it, right? So
Right.
make it worth your time, but definitely make it worth other people's time. Show them a good
Great.
time. Thanks, Venu. Thanks for having me. This has been so fun. I've loved doing this. I catch all your podcasts and I love it. I love how well spaced out it is. I love your questions. And sometimes I'm like, hey, how did you think that way, right? So I really
It's,
enjoy
it's,
these podcasts.
I'm saying this is literally like improv. If the person on the other side responds, you can
Yeah,
just keep talking.
true, true. But
Okay.
thanks
Thank
for
you,
doing this.
Ananya. Great
Take care.
having you on.
All the best to everybody. I hope to see you soon.
Great. Thank
Bye
you.
bye.